WBC lightweight world champion Devin Haney puts on an absolutely dazzling performance against Jorge Linares, winning by unanimous decision and overcoming adversity in the 10th round, and now sets his sights on an undisputed matchup against the winner of Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosas Jr. We're going to talk about that on this video. Welcome back to the channel, people. I hope you're all good. Of course, you're tuned in to Talk to Budge, and it's your boy Budge here, bringing you another video. I need to apologize to all of you guys. I know I haven't been posting any videos for a little while, a little minor setback, but that being said, we're back, and we're back with the consistency, man. So we're going to be hitting you guys up with videos on a consistent basis, day to day, bringing you the latest news, reviews, updates, so on and so forth, in the world of boxing, and of course within football too. But still, I need your support and I need your help, guys. We're working towards building this channel and building this platform. And so please make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet subscribed. Hit the like button. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Of course, this is a platform that I use to share my thoughts and my perspectives on certain things. But also because I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what your perspectives are, what your thoughts are. And that's how the channel grows. So I need you guys to help me to continue to do that. So in the comment section below, share your thoughts, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and let's get moving. Now, the topic of this video is Devin Haney's most recent performance. Of course, he last night beat Jorge Linares in his defense of his WBC lightweight world title, 135 pounds. And honestly, it was an absolutely amazing performance from my perspective on the part of Devin Haney, who now moves to 26-0 with 15 wins coming by way of knockout. What I found surprising was the judges' scorecards afterwards. So although he won by unanimous decision, two judges scored the fight 116 to 112, and another judge scored the fight 115 to 113. And that obviously suggests that the fight was a lot closer than what I saw. And that wasn't what I saw ultimately. If I'm looking at things and going through that fight and looking at things round by round and scoring it, there weren't really many rounds that I could give to Jorge Linares. It was almost a complete and utter shutout by Devin Haney. I think there were maybe potentially 2 rounds that I gave to Jorge Linares. It was that wide for me. I gave him the 4th round and I gave him the 11th round. But aside from that, it was very difficult to give him any other rounds because it was really a dominant display from Devin Haney. Of course, he also, the key talking point of the fight was the fact that he had to overcome adversity. So in the 10th round, which I actually had him winning regardless, in the final few seconds of that round, he got hit with a right hand of Jorge Linares, which stumbled him, and it was visible, and it was evident that it affected him because he stumbled back to his corner, and Jorge Linares was like kind of goading him as well, in like at the end of that round, and the way that he was, his body language was to show like, yeah, look, I hurt you. You're affected by that punch ultimately, and we saw the effects of that punch still in the 11th round, which is why I gave the 11th round to Jorge Linares as well as the 4th round, because of the fact that for the first half of that round in the 11th, Devin Haney still was visibly shaken by that punch, right? His legs had still not come back from under him. Like, he was still hugging excessively and trying to buy time and trying to get his bearings back again. And that was evident to see. And ultimately, that was the only round in the whole of the fight where Jorge Linares out-punched Devin Haney. But it was clear. You could see that he was still buzzed. He was still affected by that punch at the end of the 10th round. And so in doing so, he was a bit more cautious. He tried to box a bit more intelligently. He tried to tie up his man in the 11th round so that ultimately he wouldn't get stopped, right? This is the first time in his 26 professional fights that he has faced that kind of adversity. And to be fair, it's expected. Although, Jorge Linares has seen better days and has ultimately got 5 losses on his resume, it is a huge step up for Devin Haney. That was the best name on his resume. That was the most difficult opponent that he's fought against. And the way that Jorge Linares approached the fight and the fact that he was still a live dog that late on in the fight after being dominated for so many rounds goes to show that still at the age of 35, he's still a live opponent. He is still someone who comes in great shape, someone who is still at the top table when it comes to the best of the lightweight division. And we saw that in full effect and on display in that fight. Even prior to the fight, he said that this was like the best camp that he's ever had. And you could see that in terms of his conditioning, the way that he managed to eat a lot of the punches that Devin Haney was throwing. Like literally, Haney in the early stages of that fight was landing with whatever shot that he wanted to land with, basically. And Jorge Linares came game as you can be, showed a lot of resilience, a lot of resistance, punch resistance to take a lot of the punishment that Devin Haney was dishing out. And then for him to rally round in the later rounds in the way that he did, still with power, still with pop in his shots, it was testament to the conditioning of Jorge Linares. That being said, like I said, I only really gave him 2 rounds like that were clear, right? You might be able to argue for another few rounds here and there. But like I said, ultimately, I felt that the judges' scorecards showed that the fight was a lot closer than what it actually was. I think it was only really close towards the end because of the fact that Devin Haney got rocked in the 10th and took off the first half of the 11th round. But prior to that, and up until that point, he basically won every single round. His jab was excellent. It was sharp. He was varying his punches. He was even sticking a jab to the head and to the body, varying that very nicely. He landed loads of nice left hooks. He landed a lot of nice 1-2s and straight rights. He literally was varying his punch selection so well. And for me, it was brilliant to see that he was not only really sharp with his offense, but he was also very sharp with his defense. He didn't stay in the way. When he would land a combination, he'd make sure he'd slip, he'd move. He would feint quite often as well to just see where Jorge Linares was at when he did so. It was a brilliant boxing display, a pure boxing display from Devin Haney, which is what I expected and which is what I was happy to see ultimately in that fight. He also varied things like in terms of stages of the fight. So we saw in like the first 3 rounds, he came out with that pure boxing style that we're accustomed to seeing from Devin Haney, boxing from range, whilst he's figuring out Jorge Linares, whilst he's working him out, working the jab beautifully and keeping him at distance, right? And then we saw as the fight progressed that he started to sit down in his punches a bit more. He started to stay in the pocket. And I think that was in part due to the fact that he wanted to put on a fan-friendly fight. Of course, loads of people have criticized Devin Haney up until this point in saying that he's not a guy that gets a lot of knockouts. He's not a guy that has got much pop and power in his punches. He's not a very fan-friendly fighter. We even heard Ryan Garcia not too long ago, who was criticizing Devin Haney and saying that was part of the reason why he didn't want to fight Devin Haney, because Devin Haney didn't have a fan-friendly style and he was a bit of a boring fighter because he ultimately is a pure boxer. So we saw that probably had a bearing on his performance, and he tried to stay in the pocket a bit more, tried to be a bit more of a fan-friendly fighter and fight on the inside and sit down on his punches. And ultimately, that was part of the reason why he ended up getting hurt at the end of the 10th round, because he was staying in the pocket so much. And he got clipped, he got buzzed, but that's part and parcel of the game. Any fighter who fights on the inside is gonna get hit with a shot eventually, right? You're not gonna be able to stay scot-free and without getting having a glove laid on you for the whole fight. And so we saw that. But it was great the fact that he rallied back and he managed to weather the storm of adversity and come back and close out the show, albeit in the 11th and 12th round there was a lot of holding. I even saw Virgil Ortiz Jr. On Twitter, who was like, I've never seen so much hugging in a fight before and all that kind of stuff. So of course he's going to get criticism for that. But ultimately, it was a great performance. It was a shutout performance. He won almost every single round. He did listen to the fans in being a bit more friendly with his style against the best name on his resume. We have to remember that Jorge Linares, he dropped Lomachenko. He's the first guy to drop Lomachenko. He's got power. This is a guy that's a former world champion, freeweight world champion. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's not in there with a slouch. Even though he's slightly over the hill, he's still in there with a bona fide world champion, former world champion. So it was great that Devin Haney was able to put on the performance that he did, and I was very impressed by it. Of course, the asterisk that will remain over his name, which is exactly what I had anticipated beforehand, was the fact that he is the only guy out of all of Jorge Linares' 6 losses. Devin Haney is the only guy to have not knocked him out, to have not stopped him via TKO. He's the only guy that has beaten him by unanimous decision, right? And that was always going to be the case in point. That was always going to be the talking point. Can Devin Haney stop Jorge Linares, right? And I think, again, that was part of the reason why he sat on the inside a bit more and why he sat down on his punches and whatnot, because he ultimately wanted to stop him. He didn't get a stoppage. He got a shutout victory. There are still going to be question marks around his power and whether or not he's got enough power to get the respect of bigger punchers at 135 pounds. You talk about Teofimo Lopez, who's a big puncher. You talk about Gervonta Tank Davis when he's in that division, who's a big puncher. Ryan Garcia, who we've seen, knock out, I think, is it 3 or 4 out of his last 4 or 5 opponents. So, the question around whether he's got power still remains to be seen. And we even saw Teofimo Lopez take to Twitter afterwards. Even Chris Mannix said it in post-fight, that Teofimo texted him a plate with a knife and fork, which is ultimately saying, look, Devin Haney's food, basically. And he's come out and spoken about the fact that he is willing to make that fight next. For Undisputed, of course. I think Chris Mannix did a great job of reminding everyone who was tuned in about how much of a mess this whole WBC champion situation has been at 135 pounds, and the fact that the WBC has made Devin Haney champion, but then Teofimo Lopez won the franchise belt from Lomachenko when he wasn't supposed to, and all of that kind of stuff that makes things so confusing for everybody. But I think it was covered very, very well. And the fact that Teofimo Lopez now is basically saying, look, after this fight his fight against George Kambosas Jr., which is going to be in 3 weeks on June the 19th, I believe it is. And I expect Teofimo Lopez to win that fight. He wants to make the unification for Undisputed later on this year, which is absolutely what we should be getting. Both fighters won it. When Devin Haney was asked by Chris Mannix in his post-fight interview, he made it clear that that's the fight that he's wanted, that he wants and that he has wanted. He's made that abundantly clear, even in the run-up to this fight, that he wants Teofimo Lopez. We want to settle it once and for all. We want to get a true undisputed champion. And I don't think there's anywhere else for Teofimo Lopez to go other than Devin Haney after this fight, right? There was rumors and talks of him potentially fighting against Josh Taylor, who of course was recently made undisputed after his win against Jose Ramirez. But both him and his trainer, Ben Davison, say, look, Teofimo, that's not in our plans right now. Teofimo still has unfinished business at 135 pounds against Devin Haney. Despite the fact that he will sing from the rooftops that he is undisputed, he's not undisputed. It's still disputed because Devin Haney is a WBC world champion. So we have to wait and see what happens. Of course, Devin Haney now has a great name on his resume, which is great. He beat Gamboa and he's now beaten Jorge Linares. So he's building up his resume. Remember, he's one of the youngest guys at the division. So it's great to see him building his resume, and ultimately it was a learning fight. He learned so much about himself in that fight in terms of having to face adversity and overcoming it, and rallying round to get the win ultimately will do nothing but great favours for him going forward when he faces up against stiffer competition and harder tasks. And let's see, after Teofimo fights against George Kambosas, again, like I said, I think he's going to win that fight. But once they've done that, we'll see if Teofimo Lopez's tune is still the same ultimately. But that's a fight that we absolutely should see, and we need to see it by the end of this year. So let's wait and see what happens. Those are my thoughts on it. Tell me what you think. How do you see the fight between Haney and Linares? Do you think the judges' scorecards were fair? Or do you think that it was a bit wider than what the scorecards suggested? Let me know what you think in the comment section. Another reminder, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, sign up to all notifications so you're always aware when a new video drops. And I'm going to catch you guys on the next episode or the next video that we do coming out tomorrow. Until then, over and out.